Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. I'm Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-founders of EntrePastors, and this is episode number 230. And in this episode, you're going to be hearing from a friend of ours by the name of Jeremey Brown. And we're titling this episode, Turning Big Problems into Big Opportunities, because that's one of the major themes you're going to hear again and again as Jeremey shares his powerful testimony of coming to know Christ as his Lord and Savior, and then really dealing with some difficult challenges in his family's life, specifically in some health things, and how he has turned to business as a solution to provide for some of these amazing, tremendous needs that have come about. And the theme that I really want you to hear is how we can often take what seems to be a big problem in our life and see how God is working behind the scene to actually promote us, to open a door of opportunity and help us grow to the next level. And Jeremey's story certainly contains a lot of that theme and a bunch of other great stuff. So I'm excited to share this conversation with you. Without any further ado, check out our talk we had with Jeremey Brown. Here we go. All right, guys, I'm thrilled to bring Jeremey Brown as a guest into our Business Builders community. And Jeremey's not a pastor to the best of my knowledge, but as I introduce him, I want to tell a quick story and maybe teach a quick lesson in the process. Business is really, at the end of the day, it's about relationships, especially if you're doing it right. Like, business is about building relationships. And that's why I often say, and we say here at EntrePastors, that pastors really have kind of an unfair advantage in the marketplace if they take those skills that they've been honing over years of caring for people and then go start a business with that skill set. Like, it doesn't matter what the business is. If you take care of people, you're going to thrive. And so I want to talk about some relationships that got us connected to Jeremey. And even as I connected with Jeremey, I was like, you can just tell sometimes, like, this is a guy I want to know. This is a guy that seems to be, on a similar path, and he's our people to a degree. So the backstory, you've heard me share this before, some of you guys, through one of my entrepreneurial businesses in the marketplace. I had this random opportunity a few years ago to minister to a gal by the name of Lori Sheldon in her home. She had me hang a TV, and as I'm working there, she's talking to me about her daughter who's a missionary. So long story short, I comped her invoice that day and said, just pay your daughter, give your daughter what you would have paid me. In that process, she's telling me about a book that she was wanting to write. And so, as with EntrePastors Press, I'm like, tell me more about this book. I introduced her to Les, who coached her through the writing process. Turns out Jeremey's her publisher here out of Sioux Falls. And so after
you're the guy.
That's the guy, Les. I knew you. Les didn't know this, Jeremey, coming into the call. He didn't know the connection.
No, I didn't. But hey, great job.
I heard about you too, Les.
After she spoke with you, it was done. She said, I got my guy.
That's
awesome. That's good.
I heard all about you too. I'm going, oh, you're the guy.
Yeah, so I surprised both of you. Surprise, it's a surprise party.
Hey, man, congratulations on the bestseller status, too. That's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Likewise.
That's my first one.
Awesome.
So there you go.
On the fire department, Les, anytime it's someone's first of anything, they have to buy malts for the crew. So anytime someone says, that's the first time, we're like, malts, you got to buy malts.
Yeah,
so
I got you, dog.
Hey, so Jeremey, he and I got connected as a result of the Lori Sheldon connection, just very loosely through social media. And then back in December, it was December 5th, Jeremey put a post out on Facebook kind of updating his bio. And this is where I'm going to get ready to hand it over to you, Jeremey. But, I read parts of your story that I didn't know, because, again, you and I don't know each other super well. But I knew that you were doing some entrepreneurial things. And so, again, that always resonates with me when I rub shoulders with other entrepreneurs. But then when I read your story, I was like, man, there are themes in here that would bless our community, who's largely made up of pastors and other ministry-minded people who are also engaging in entrepreneurial stuff out in the marketplace. And at the end of the day, here's what I think, Jeremy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm reading between the lines is I think Jeremy's a guy who has a heart for the kingdom. He loves Jesus. He loves people. He's having some success in business, and that success has not come easy necessarily. There's been some valleys and some
Yeah.
difficult struggles to come through. So I don't really have a structure for this call, Jeremy, other than I'd love to kind of draw your story out of you. And then, guys, feel free to ask questions. But you, Jeremy, with you kind of knowing the makeup of our group, share the parts of your story that you think would really be a blessing and benefit to us. So is that a good enough framework, Jeremy, for me to say, go ahead, take it away, or do you need more structure than that?
Works for me. I'm ready for whatever. So I mean, I'll go through the quick and the dirty, and then maybe we can get to the Q&A and make things super relevant for guys. Because I would say, and maybe how my background is relevant to this is I became a business owner at 19, and I that was my last kind of W-2 quote unquote experience. And I've been a full-time business for myself since, but I also started a couple ministries here and there. And, I was able to kick those off, start those, fund those, and then either put them on the shelf or pass them off. And I definitely see my businesses as a ministry, and it's ministry first in our businesses. And I'd say to you, John, like when Lori told me about you, she told me like he told me did his thing, and then he told me to give the money to my daughter, and it was so impactful to her.
Hmm.
And I thought, you couldn't have paid for better marketing than that. That got you to me. We're here, but also like I'm using Dakota Small Jobs for all of our rental property fixer uppers, which will be pretty much every month probably.
I
Um,
need more of your stuff to break then, by the way, just FYI. But
well, it's probably going to break pretty soon. We've had some pretty good families in there, but I would imagine with a 6 month renter, we're going to have some broken stuff. I'm already seeing stuff, so I'm making a list. Let's just put it that way.
Nice.
But so, I grew up in small town South Dakota. I was in church. I was a Catholic. I was a Lutheran. I straddled the fence. Never really knew anything about the Lord at all. And I'm 19. I have a kid. I wasn't married, did not want to get married, didn't understand anything about marriage, no interest whatsoever. I really thought being a single dad was kind of the winner. I wanted to have a lot of kids. I just didn't want to have a wife. So I was like, you know what? If I have a handful of kids with different people, I really thought that was the ticket. And because I had extended daycare, I would call it.
hmm,
And this is where my mind was.
hmm,
And when I held my son for the first time at 19, I didn't know. I was like, I want to be the best man I can be for this kid. I just didn't know what that meant at all.
hmm.
And I saw Jesus as this guy with babies and lambs, and he turned the other cheek so many times they finally just killed him. That was my opinion of him. It was not relevant to me at all. But I really had a strong desire to be a good man. So you guys know what we do is we look to people who capture our hearts as men, and we emulate them whether we know we are or not. So I saw Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. 500 magazine. I saw that whole thing, and I equated manhood to money, women, and business. And if I had a better girlfriend than you, if I looked like I had more money than you, didn't have to be real, I just had to look like I did, and I had a bigger business, that was me winning. And I lived my life that way for many years. And then finally, I lost all those things. Girl I thought I was going to marry dumped me, lost my business because my partner was embezzling money from me, and I lost all the money I had. And I remember praying without really knowing what prayer was really. And I just said, I'm a mess, not in business, but in life. Like, I don't know what to do. So I started to go to a church in town. They had 6 services a week. I went to every service every week for a year. And I just said, okay, Lord, like I've always had big ideas and big visions, so to speak. But I said, um, I was reading this book by John Eldridge called Fathered by God, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And in there, he quotes Exodus 15:3, which says, the Lord is a warrior. And I'd never heard that before. And I said, if that's the way this guy is, I want to know everything about him. I want to know why he made me, what he wants to do with me. And I said, I'm not going to have any goals except for that. I said, I'm just going to do what I need to do to pay the bills, which at that time as a single guy, I'm in my mid 20s. I make 1,500 bucks. I'm golden. So I was like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I had to work like 10, 15 hours a week. And then every spare second I had, I said, whatever you send my way, if I feel like God's telling me to do something, go somewhere, I'm just going to do it. And that's it. And I did that for a good year and a half. And he started to send me all kinds of young men who were just as much of a mess as I was. And literally to the point where I'm at Hy-Vee, a grocery store in Sioux Falls. I'm in the parking lot going, Lord, like, what do you want me to do with my life? And some kid's knocking on the window, literally going, hey, he was an addict. He's like, can you get me to the arch? And I said, cripes, just hop in, dude, and like, let's go. And that's what happened for like a year and a half. I mentored over 100 young men. We started a warrior ministry, integrated Bible studies and CrossFit style workouts. And then I started a consulting company to fund the ministry where we would mentor to people. It was kind of like, I wouldn't have called it that, but it was like a pastor on staff kind of a situation. Did that for a while, had a great time with it. And through all that, like, that's how the Lord got to me of the purpose of marriage, why you would get married, why you would have a family. And I just was like, I was excited to get married. And, long story short, I found my wife, greatest thing ever happened to me. We met through her boss, who was one of my clients who went to church with us, and on we go. And now here we are. We're married 10 years. We have 5 sons, and hopefully we can have a couple more. And we've been through um, the last, I would say, 4 years. What you saw, John, was we were born, our fourth, is it the fourth? Yeah, the fourth son was born with severe bilateral clubfoot. We were told he would need certain kind amounts of surgeries to be able to ever walk. We prayed about it and did all of our research. We didn't think that necessarily had to be the case. So we essentially hopped in a Sprinter van, drove 100,000 miles, interviewed 40, 50 different doctors, made up our own therapy structure and healing modality. My son walks surgery free, just like any other little kid. And now my wife, that's her business, is if when kids have issues that can't really seem to be solved, parents come and show up right at our house and she gets extraordinary results. So that's what we're up to. And like you say, John, I mean, there's a lot of resistance training, as I would call it. Like, I think people, especially us Christians, before I was a Christian, I hated Christian people because it was like you're a passive person disguising your passivity as spirituality. And I vividly remember one guy showing up. He had a meeting with me, and I'm this young guy. I was so arrogant. He was like 45 minutes late, and he said, God wanted me to be late to this meeting. I remember just being like, get out of my office. Like, you are the kind of people why I don't want to be any part of your religion. And you know, that's where learning how to be a man is what God taught me. And through Christ, it was like he's the man maker. And it's amazing. And like you're saying, John, we have the biggest advantage in the marketplace because the marketplace is the only place in the world you're financially incentivized to love your neighbor as yourself. And it's actually a really good way to do business.
Hmm.
So, long story short, where we're at today now is because we had to drive all over the country. We put about 100 grand into each one of my son's feet. I had to figure out how to way to make money while we're on the road in about 15 hours a week and more money than I ever made in my life because insurance didn't cover anything. And so I got into real estate and I started doing that. And that's how we kind of funded that whole process. And now it's become our kind of bread and butter business in addition to publishing. And they're kind of integrated now. Somebody comes in, we do a book, we do legacy books for people's families. That's kind of our main role. We interview your parents about their life, make a book for their family. Then they usually end up investing with us in real estate in some way, shape, or form. And some of the uh, entities we have that buy and sell real estate, and it all kind of works together now. And I never would have dreamt that up myself.
Hmm.
But it was because we had a great big huge problem, and we tackled it with the help of the Lord, and at the same time doing everything we possibly could to solve the problem that we could do, and it thankfully worked out this time. Doesn't always, but it did this time.
Man, thank you for sharing that. And again, just one of the themes that I love about that maybe I want to draw out of your story is that God honors the marketplace. And in the church world, I get so tired of this mentality, this posture that is among a lot of Christians and even pastors who kind of look at the marketplace and business as this yucky secular thing. And, I'm doing the Lord's work inside the four walls of the church. And the only time I'm really excited about the business community is during the offering. That's when I kind of need my business leaders, the people who are getting it done in the marketplace to fund, our vision and our mission here. But like God honors business. He honors people who are serving in the marketplace. And I just want to say that. I want to bring that out and highlight that. And here's another thing that struck me when I read your post, and I think this is another connection I wanted to make. And you just put more commentary around it and painted an even clearer picture. I love how you said you had to put 100 grand into each one of your son's feet as you're in that journey of trying to find healing and solutions. And your back's against the wall financially, going, how do I make this much money? I love that you turned to business as the solution, because there's a theme with EntrePastors. We work with pastors who are severely underfunded. They are so underpaid in their pastoral work. And rather than, turning to government for assistance or just begging for more money from the church, to be able to like see a solution that's far more lucrative out in the marketplace where the ceiling has been lifted from your earning potential. I just love that. It's not, I know I'm simplifying it. It's not easy. I didn't say it was easy, but it's a real process in terms of getting out in the community and earning money by providing value. So I love that about your story.
Well, and I think that, thank you for that. I think too, I had a little bit of an advantage because I've been in business for so long. I really didn't know any other way, but it put me up against the wall where I had to produce results, and a result I've never been able to produce. I had to. Like, I couldn't let any of my employees go. I wanted to, I couldn't let them go. We had to invest a ton of money in housing, and we had to get a nanny. I never would have got a nanny before. We weren't travelers before any of this happened. So I think God can take a big, huge, hairy problem and change your life with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's what we miss as Christian people, is we think problems are a problem. And that
Hmm.
means I'm not doing the right thing. And we have to have wise people around us to help us discern that. But big problems is what God uses to wake us up a lot of times. And as men, especially, I think the passivity in us goes so deep, we don't produce a result oftentimes until we absolutely have to, even when we're developed. Like, there's just some problems around my house that until I absolutely have to call John, I probably won't get to it, or I'm going to do it. And we all have that no matter what. Like, it's in our core. We just become more aware and better how to deal with it. But, when you have to produce a result, it can be a great opportunity to invite the Lord into that with you. And I tell you what, guys, like, it says he's a light unto my path and a lamp unto my feet. I didn't quote that exactly right, but a light and a lamp isn't like a floodgate. It's like a candle. And I had to take it literally 1 week at a time. I will never forget. We're going to Chicago, and I could only do 1 week. I'm like, this week, last week was $6,000. The next 2 weeks is going to be $18,000. Then we got to go to California from Chicago. That's going to be like 20 some thousand bucks. I'm like, all I can think about is this week right now. And I remember I think here's what you got to do is I encourage people, like, square up with what's the very worst thing that could possibly happen. Like, if you have your health, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? And if you get there, can you find a way to handle that? So for me, it was, what's the worst thing? Well, we can't figure this out. Okay, he's got to go have surgery. We can do that. All right. I'm not going to force this. We're not anti-medical. We just thought there's got to be a better way. All our research said this doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing was, well, what happens if what's the worst that happens if we're out trying to make all this happen? Well, what if we completely run out of money, and all my accounts are overdrawn? I tapped all my credit. I have nothing. What would I need? And I really squared up with that and said, well, I need a couple $1,000 to get us back home in cash. So I went and I got cash and I put it in my gun bag, and it's still there to this day, that if the whole thing falls apart, and worst case scenario, I can get us back home. Okay.
Cool.
Like, I can handle that now. So I could take it 1 week at a time. And I said, Lord, if it all runs out, I'm okay with that. We've done everything we could possibly do. I have peace with that. And we're leaving no stone unturned with what we are supposed to do. You're going to do what you can do. It is what it is. And we were driving into Chicago. I finally crossed the threshold of that city, and I did a real estate deal at the time, which was the biggest deal I did. I made like $18,000.
Wow.
And that's what I needed to fund that trip. I knew I had like 11 business days to fund the trip. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I had a bunch of different options out there though. So I don't want to be like, well, it was just pure blind faith. I had a whole lot of options. I was trying to put everything in place that I could, knowing, Lord, you're going to make it all come together. You're going to do what you can do. I got to do what I can do though. I got to put out as many options for myself for income and revenue as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So it was not a sit and wait approach. It was throw as many fishing lines as I can with the businesses I have, and then see what kind of shakes out. And all the while,
That's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and all the while, if it runs out, we turn around, we go home, we do the surgery, and we know we did everything we possibly could. I could tell my son someday, dude, we did everything we possibly could have. We put everything on the line, put all the chips in, we did it all. That's what I wanted to be able to say at the end of the day with this whole thing.
Yeah. That's a thread that we could pull a little bit, because I find myself in recent years, as I've been on a kind of a transitional story in my ministry and life and career and whatnot, transitioning away from being kind of more of that traditional full-time pastor of one church. It started by going into the fire service, kind of re-entering the fire service and having another full-time job, and then really started to lean into the entrepreneurial thing, then stepped away from full-time pastoring, which felt scary, and then really leaned into the entrepreneurial thing. But all along the way, I'm never, and this is probably true of a lot of entrepreneurs, we're never exactly where we want to be. We always have goals and our sights further down the road. And so I've found myself in these recent years praying to God at times like I have the hooks in the water, so to speak. I've got multiple things that I have, put myself out there. I've taken initiative, I've worked hard. And it's kind of what that resonated with me, what you were saying earlier, that we do what we can do, and then we trust God to do the heavy lifting, the stuff that only He can do, and lining up the supernatural. But sometimes I think as Christians, going back to your passive, statement, we do over spiritualize laziness. And well, I'm just going to pray about it. God's a provider. Bless God. Well, it sounds really spiritual, but sometimes God's provision shows up with a pair of leather work gloves or boots, and an opportunity that's masked as a problem that you
100%.
can solve for other people. So I think I love that part about your story, that and even as you're talking about that $18,000 deal, the words of Jesus went through my mind, give us this day our daily bread. For you that
Yeah.
week, it was 18 grand.
Yeah.
And I mean, what if God actually would provide as we take bold steps forward? What if He would actually provide that week what our business needs to do? What if we believed Him for that instead of sitting back waiting for, all the lights to turn green before we get out of the starting gate?
Well, I think that's a great point, John, because I think we got to know what's the worst case scenario, but then what's enough? Like, so what is my daily bread? And how do I know that so I'm okay with it and I'm not just striving? There was so many years of my life where I'd get out of bed at 5 a.m. every day because that's what I needed to do. And I think you got to know the worst and you got to know what's enough. What is the daily bread situation so we can just acknowledge that and be grateful for it and rest in that of like, okay, because the same thing, um, you're talking about, there's always another goal. We always need more money. Like,
Mm.
no matter how much we get, we need more, or we want more, or could do more. Or if I'm content with the next month, I'm thinking about the second month or the 6th month or whatever it is. And just understanding that. I had a CPA for the longest time, and they were always like, because my business runs off of pure referrals, my publishing business. I do zero marketing at all. I have zero budget. I've made one website, the whole business, and it's been 14 years now. And they were always like, you need to have a pipeline tracker and you need to know how much is in your pipeline and this and that. And they'd be like, what's in your pipeline? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I'm have a whole bunch of conversations and well, how are you going to close them? What's your sales process? They call me when they want to do something and the timing is right. Like that is it. And I took me a long time to realize like, that's kind of a good way to do things. I'm not trying to get so big and crazy and scale. I'm not there. I just want to take care of my family and I want to do a good job at that. And that's about it. And yeah, I want to build some wealth, but the biggest thing I'm thinking about is how do my kid, what do I need to do to set up my kids to succeed? And it's so little about money. Like that could be the worst thing. So
Mm.
that's kind of the driving force of my life. And I think it's just the work of the Lord over so many years, because he had to do a whole bunch of work on me. I was a mess. And so I think that'd be my encouragement to guys is know the worst case, square up with it and handle it if you can. Like for me, it was a little bit of cash. Okay, it's there. It's still there. We're
Mm.
setting out for another 6 months. What if it doesn't work? It might not. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like we're good with it. And then knowing what's enough to where otherwise I'm just constantly what's the next thing? What's the bigger thing? What's the better thing? Well, I'm kind of content right now. I'm not going to get anything better than a wife and 5 sons unless I have 6 sons or 5 daughters too. That's the only place I get any better in my opinion. And I'm totally good with that.
Mm.
And so that's what I think we got to know though both extremes, and it helps clear
Yeah.
your mind.
Yeah. Speak to this as someone who's been in business for a while now, because sometimes I wrestle with that. I'm kind of poking around in the area of like the tension between being content versus leaning into the God-given desires and gifting to grow and to scale. Because I don't think it's wrong to scale something and to grow it bigger. And I'll put some real clothes on this. Like, and it ties into something else you just said too about God providing for us. Since I started my handyman business a few years ago, I immediately saw the opportunity, like, man, you could grow this significantly. And then also pretty quickly got to that place of recognizing I don't want to fall into the trap that so many small business owners do, where they are the guy out doing everything.
Yeah.
And from all my years in pastoral ministry, growing a multi-site church, I know the answer is delegation, build a team. And yet then here comes the fear or the pressure, like, man, if I actually build a team, now I feel the weight of responsibility for people. And so I've been on that journey, kind of weighing that out, wading into that water. But in recent months, the kind of the last half of 2024, I really started to take stronger steps in that direction. And it's interesting to me, God keeps providing just enough at the right time. It would make me breathe a little easier if I could look at our calendar and go, we're booked up for a month solid. Um, and yet, like, I keep taking steps forward, and guess what? Enough work keeps coming in to keep those guys going. So the scary part is it feels so day by day at times. And I think maybe God wants it that way, or at least he's designed it to work that way. Not to say we can't have more, but I guess I'm coming full circle back to my original question. Speak to that tension of being content with what God has provided, which I don't disagree with, but I can see where people could over spiritualize that and go, see, Pastor, just be content with your $30,000 salary where you're barely getting by, versus on the other side of that, this desire to grow and to expand and to multiply and,
Yeah.
dominate in the marketplace. So what say you to that? That's a
Well,
loaded, really big question.
I think you got to know your season. Different people are in different seasons. Right now, for me, I had many years of I'm just building as big as I can get. And when I got what I wanted, I didn't really want that. I didn't want it as big as I could get personally.
Mm-hmm.
But now I got this experience the last 4 years where I saw the impact on my sons when I was there more. And I also have a 21-year-old. He left the nest, like he's off payroll. It's done. And I got to taste that. So I'm like, you know what? I told my wife, I'm like, let's just kind of flip it in reverse. Like, let's put more time into the kids now. We can work later. Everybody I know, when they go empty nesting, that becomes some of the richest years of their life, or like they just kind of do what they want to do. So why am I trying to work so hard when my kids are little, when I'm never going to get that back? So what's the season you're in? You got to know that there's a time to build like crazy, and just to be like, I'll have little seasons too. Like I'm about to go into a little season where short term I'm going to really sprint and do some things. And it's to push us over a certain ledge to be able to do some other things. But you got to just know your season, and not everybody is built to be a builder or to scale a business. My publishing business, I was like, I'm going to scale this thing, blah, blah, blah. I did a bunch of marketing for like a year. I got a ton of business. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I was like, okay, I got everything I ever wanted and I don't like it.
Hmm.
And it made me go, well, why should I try to build a business where I'm making $1 million plus in revenue, but I'm making the same amount of money as when the business was at like 300,000 a year?
Hmm.
and it was so much easier for me to manage. I could do other things. I had asked that question. So I think it's different seasons in your life. You'll push the gas pedal more in other areas of your life versus not, right?
That's a good
We're all
word.
we're all in different seasons, so you just got to identify where that is. And I think it's fine either way. It's fine to say I'm good with 30. It's fine to say I want 130. It's fine to do whatever. I think a lot of times, and this is like, so me and my wife, we went for 3 months on the road and we're like, Lord, just show us where you want us to live. We're feeling like we're called to go get some land in another part of the country and do some homesteading to teach the boys and all that. And at the end of the day, I was like, he's either going to give us really clear direction or he's just going to say, you know what? I trust you guys.
Mm.
I am with you. You keep locked in with me and I trust you to make a good decision and I'll bless that decision. You just need to make a decision though.
Mm.
And so it's about, to me, Jon, you got to know the season you're in, and Les might be in a different season than Mark. Mark might be peeling back. Les might be pushing forward. Neither one's right or wrong. They're doing what they need to do in the season of life they're in.
It's a real good word. Guys, I want to open it up and ask if any of you have questions or comments or feedback. Feel free to jump in. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.